Good evening, everybody. Geez, every time I decide to start filming, there's always a soundtrack in the background. But anyway, I'm just gonna go ahead with this. This particular vlog has probably been about 33 years in the making. It took considerable time and conscious effort to continue my education, not just about myself, but about the world around me. And in recent months, I've seen a certain type of rhetoric being perpetuated within racial, social, gender, and LGBT conversations and narratives. And the more of it I see, the more angered by it I become. And it's just time for me to say this right now. Fuck respectability. You heard me. Fuck respectability, as in respectability politics. So, for those of you who aren't aware of that term, respectability politics is basically when people within an oppressed or marginalized group polices everyone else within said group to adapt to and maintain the status quo within mainstream culture instead of holding mainstream culture accountable and challenging it for its failure to accept differences and nuances that come with the numerous different peoples and cultures and orientations. In my eyes, I see it as an acceptance of negative stereotypes of a group instead of holding mainstream culture accountable for being so ethnocentric in the first place, without realizing that its own culture isn't so respectable itself. As a black woman, distancing myself from respectability is a revolutionary act within itself. For me, it means that I refuse to affirm the mainstream view of my group as it was forged in the fires of white supremacy. It means that I will not go out of my way to prove the dominant culture wrong about arbitrary behaviors that all human beings partake in, and stereotypes used to rationalize the continued tainting of black people's image. I will not go out of my way to prove that I'm not like those other ghetto, ratchet, niggers, hoes, Jezebels, welfare queens over there giving black people a bad name, as if being black isn't associated with just being bad, period, or having a bad name, period. I will not go out of my way to prove that I'm not a sloppy or a loose woman, especially when those terms, and even worse ones, are used to shame and ostracize women who dare to believe that their sexuality is theirs to wield and own. You know, a thing that society expects all men to believe and adhere to, but not women. So why am I basically saying I won't go out of my way to do all these things? Because no group is a monolith. Respectability, to me, basically comes down to having to jump through an ever-changing and increasing number of hoops to prove your value as a human being to others who expect that you value their humanity at all times without being put through the same rigors. You know, since in their eyes, they and their culture are the standard by which others should aspire to and should be judged by. You know, so basically it's like, you know, there are things about your inferior culture that we find extremely problematic, and it's up to you to change and adapt to our ethnocentric, desaturated perspective and prove our faulty perceptions of you wrong, because we're too intellectually lazy to see and accept differences in all things, because in doing so, we'll no longer benefit from keeping you below us. That is what respectability means to me. And I'm disappointed that so many people within marginalized groups continue to perpetuate it when it hasn't done a damn thing to improve our lives. Last I checked, respectability hasn't eliminated racism, racial prejudice, or bigotry. Respectability hasn't eradicated sexism and misogyny. Respectability hasn't destroyed LGBT phobia, and it never will. Those of you who believe in its merits, I mean, y'all can go ahead and continue to try something that hasn't been proven to work or save anyone. But isn't that like the definition of insanity? So, you know, that whole thing about doing something a million times while not seeing different results. And isn't it about time that we start holding mainstream responsible for its intellectual laziness instead of just accepting it and thus being complicit in our own struggle?